Okay, hello everyone. Glad you guys could make it. Looks like we have about 15 people that are logged in. Still may have a few more that come in here in the next few minutes, but want to go ahead and get started so everyone can kind of go ahead and get about their day. So I know you guys all have studios to get started. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, looking at the attendees list, I see a bunch of names that I do know. Wendy, always glad you could make it. And quite a few others I know, and then I see a bunch of names I don't know. So for those of you who I haven't been talking to for years and years now, my name is Brett. I run the support side of the business here at Akada. For those of you that have been with us for a long, long time and used to talk to Susie every day, I took over her role as her and Dale retired. So I do all the support in the sale, or I run the support in the sales side of the business. A little bit about the company itself. For those of you who may be newer with us, Akada started 25 years ago, this past month in January. My wife actually grew up dancing in a studio down in Sarasota, Florida, and her mom, Susie, ran the business side. She was the office manager, and her father was a software engineer. And back in the day, when Windows was just starting out, there weren't really a lot of these softwares that were very good, and there were none at that point that were Windows based. So the studio reached out to him and asked him what he could put together, and just sort of took off from there. So it's a family run business. Just, and it's taken off, and we are now 25 years into it. It's sort of crazy, but it's doing good. But we're always trying to make it better. One of the ways that we felt like we could do that is these webinars. We rolled these out a few years ago, and they were more of just kind of a geared at basically beginning to end with the software. Showing you how to set it up and that sort of thing. And it started off really well, and the audience sort of dwindled as we did them. And I think that was because most of the people who were coming had been using the software forever, and they knew what was going on. They didn't really need our help getting it set up at that point. So naturally, they lost a little bit of interest. So we wanted to change it up this year and kind of bring these back. And we're going to try to gear these towards more what's going on with your studio as far as the calendar throughout the year. So we'll do, the costumes now. We'll do recitals in a month or two. We're going to start talking about planning for the summer and next fall pretty soon. Actually, I think that's on the schedule for next month. And then we'll repeat a lot of these again in the fall. We'll do the costumes again because those are usually a twice a year thing. So with that said, let's go ahead and start to jump in. Now, for those of you who may have never done one of these webinars before, you should be able to hear me, but I cannot hear you. This application is just not really set up for that. And I think the delay with the webcam would probably all cause a lot of problems with that too, as far as you trying to talk back to me. However, you can ask me questions throughout this webinar. You should have a chat box there. You can just type in your question, and then I'll be able to see it. I have it right here on my screen so I can see them as they come in. As we go through the webinar, if you have a question or I'm talking just way too fast and you need me to slow down or repeat something, go ahead and let me know, and I'll be glad to backtrack a little bit. If you have a question that's more specific towards, what you've experienced, or towards maybe something specific for your studio, maybe you have a kind of an odd setup that's a little bit different, let's hold those kind of questions till the very end, and we'll save some time and do like a question answer session. So let's try this chat box out, and let's make sure everyone knows how it's working. Just shoot me a message and let me know where everyone's coming from. Brian, I can see you're here from Peachtree City, which is not too far from our other office in Atlanta. But everyone else, just shoot me a message. Let me know, maybe it's just the city and state where you're coming from. Make sure everybody understands how this works. And then I will, as those are kind of coming in, I will go ahead and jump into this. Excuse me. Okay, so here we go. Costumes. So the basic premise here is that Akada should be able to help you organize all of your costume ordering, all the management, the size assignment, the cost that you guys pay your vendors, the charges that you pass on to your customers, and all of that sort of thing. It's designed to streamline all of that, keep it all in one area so that you can keep it well organized. You know, I've been to the UDMA shows. I see you guys with your binders, and it's so impressive to see how organized those binders are, and you guys have them memorized. But this is just to help take a little of that out of it. So let's go ahead and jump in here. So when you get ready to start this up, you're just going to come to Performances, and it'll bring you to this page that I'm currently on. And then you're going to go to Manage Costumes. The first step is going to be adding the vendor in. And this can be this is honestly probably one of the more tedious steps, and it really it'll be the worst the first time you do this. If you have 10 different vendors you work with, this is going to it'll take a little bit of time to set this up. But next year when you go to do this, you won't have to do that step again. You'll just add in maybe the 1 or 2 new vendors that you're trying out. So we're going to click Add, and it's going to bring us to our vendor screen. And then I'm going to do Weissman's, a very popular costume company. So you put in the vendor name. If you have a contact person, you can put their name in there. And then obviously you can put in the vendor's mailing address, city, state, their phone number. If they have a fax number, if you still fax your order to them, you can put that in. And then obviously the email address. So I'm just going to say Sally@Weissman's.com and hit save. Over here, you can put in, if you have an account number with that vendor, you can put in your customer number. If there is a, whatever their sales tax rate is, you can plug that in. If it's a costume vendor, which is what we're talking about, you're going to want to make sure this box is checked. The difference there is if it's a vendor for something that isn't costumes, maybe something for point of purchase, maybe snacks or something, some sort of vendor like that, maybe a water vendor, you can just uncheck that box and it won't show up here. Your order date is the day that you plan on ordering your costumes. The required date would be the date that you need them by, so when you expect to have them in your door. And then the picture date obviously is kind of self-explanatory. That's going to be the sort of the date that your kids get their pictures made in them. So we're just going to save now. And then we're going to scroll down here to the size charts. This is one of the most important steps in setting up your vendors, and one where we kind of see people maybe not completely understanding exactly how this is supposed to be set up or the idea behind it. So to give you a little bit of background, I'm just going to pull up Weissman's size chart, which I had pulled up right here. Now, the software has the ability to assign a student their costume based strictly off the girth measurement. Obviously, there are 4 other different measurements that you can put into the system. The only one the system actually uses is the girth measurement. There's just too many variables for us to code every possibility at 5 different measurements with all the different measurements that could be part of those 5. So it strictly goes by the girth measurement. And that's going to get you the student in the costume probably 75 in the right costume size 75–80% of the time, and we understand that. You're always going to need to come back with those kids who are sort of in between. Maybe they have long legs, short legs, long arms, short arms, that sort of thing. Maybe a little softer in the middle, for lack of a better term. That you're going to want to go in and manually edit the size after you've let the system assign them. But it really should get you probably 75–80% of the kids in the right sizes. And then you can just change the ones in between. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Weissman's size chart here, and we're going to look at the girth measurements. See if I can, well, let me highlight that on the screen for you. But really, for each of these sizes, the only girth measurement we're really interested in is the largest size, the largest measurement for each size. So in this extra small child, the only one we really care about is that 40 right there. So what we're going to do is go back to our system, and let me get their size chart pulled up on my other screen. And so I'm going to go ahead. Now there are 3 different size charts that you can use. There's a number size chart, as you can see here. The more popular letter size chart, which is what we're going to use here in a minute. And then there's also a boys size table. And obviously that's going to be for costumes that are strictly for boys. So I'm going to stick with this one here in the middle, and we're going to start with the smallest size that they offer. We're going to do the extra small, and that went from a 36 to 40. So all I'm going to put in is 40, and I'm going to hit save. And then you can see this will jump to the next size, which for them is a small child. And the largest measurement for that size is going to be 44. And then we're going to do, they skipped this one, it looks like. We're going to do intermediate child. And their largest measurement for that is 47. And then we're going to go to large child. Go. And the largest one for that is 55. I may have skipped one there, but you will get the idea here. Yeah, it looks like I did. So again, the biggest thing is that you're just going to plug in the largest measurement for each size. So the system, when you go to assign a costume, is going to know anything that's bigger than 40 and up to 44 is going to get a child small. So if the child has a girth measurement of 42, then they're going to get assigned this child small here. And each of these works the same way. You do the exact same thing on any of these tables. It's just attaching a number to the corresponding size, just depending on the way that works. So we've got this done. Now obviously looks like about 10 more different sizes you can choose from, and then obviously it can go into the adult size chart. So you'll just fill this out until you've got them all in, and then hit save and you're done. And hopefully next year their size chart won't have changed and you won't have to do this again next year. So we're going to jump back and we're going to go plug in a costume here. So now to plug in a costume, you're going to come here to add edit costumes. And one thing I did leave out, and I always tell people this when I'm working with them one-on-one, ideally the best way to do this and not skip steps, just start here on the left and go across, work your way across left to right. So the last things you're going to be doing are posting the charges and your reports and so on. The only one of those steps, and we'll talk about it again here in just a second, that really doesn't matter when you do is entering the measurements, but everything else, it's just best to work left to right. So we're going to go here to add edit, and then we're going to pick our vendor. And I'm going to choose Wiseman's, and then now I can plug in a costume. Now I have one pulled up on my other screen here ready to go. So I'm just going to plug in the name. Now you can plug in, if you're working off of their paper catalog, you can plug in the catalog number, obviously the page number, and then the color of the costume. Most of you probably know we are actually overhauling this entire studio app. And one thing I've suggested to our programmers is for the new app, once it's ready, is to give you basically a place to just plug in the link so that you can click a button and jump straight to that costume if you need to. But we're just going to plug these in real quick. And this is blue. Now, okay, so as we work through this box, more than one costume or accessory may be ordered per student. You're only going to check this only situation you will check this is if this is something you actually want them to have more than one of. Some people mistakenly think that checking this will allow you to assign multiple costumes to a child, and that's not going to be the case. This is if you want them to be able to have more than this one thing. So there's not going to be a lot of situations where that's going to apply to a costume. With accessories, you might see that more, but for costumes, you're not going to see that very often. So now we're going to tell it what size chart to use for this particular costume. So we're going to say the letter size chart that we set up, and we're going to tell it if we want it to be girls and boys, girls only, or boys only. I'm going to do both here, and the quantity is 1. Again, with the quantity, some people mistakenly think they're plugging in basically how many kids they're assigning the costume to. So maybe there's 12 kids enrolled in the class. They may mistakenly plug in 12 here. That's not going to be the case. This is going to be 1 unless you want to order 2 or 3 or 4 or 12 of this one particular thing. So again, this will always be one just about, unless it's an accessory that you want them to have multiple of. So basically the only time this will be more than one is if you have this box checked also. All right, so next is assigning the size to the cost and the price. And this is an important step. If you're paying the same thing no matter the size, and you're charging your customers the same thing no matter the size, then just plug in the largest size of the costume, what you're paying the vendor for, so the cost is what you pay for it, and then the price is what you charge for it. And if you're paying the same and you're charging everyone the same price, you're done. However, that's not usually the case, especially with the cost portion. So what you're going to do is plug in the largest size at each price point. So if everything up to a child large costs you $60 and you charge your customers $85, you plug it in like that. And then everything up to the next price point, or then you will enter in everything up to the next price point. So I'm going to say everything between a child large and an adult small is 70. Plug in 95. And then everything above a small up to an adult extra 3XL, let's say, is 80 and 105. And that's how you plug that in. I see customers who have one entry for every size, and they call us and ask us, hey, I'm running out of places to put these prices. This is the reason. You only have to put the largest size for each price point that either you were paying or you were charging your customers. I think typically if you're paying one price, you're going to charge everyone the same thing. So then you just hit save. Now, a couple other things on this while I'm here. Let me go back. And I failed to mention this in the webinar yesterday. If you charge a costume deposit beforehand, so maybe you've already charged everybody $25 for a deposit or whatever, easiest thing to do is just deduct that out of the price. So in this case, 25, I would just make it 60, 70, and then 80. That's the easiest way. Again, in our new app, we're going to try to make that step a little bit easier. Maybe just add in a column here for the deposit so that it'll make posting those deposits easier, and then obviously the final charge a little bit easier too. All right, so I'm going to hit save again, and we're ready to go. So next here is going to be entering the measurements. As I said earlier, this is the only step that doesn't really matter when you do it. And this can be done from multiple pages, and really multiple people can do it. You can enter the measurements from the class screen. Let's see, this is the little example class I'm going to be working with. So you can come down here, just scroll down, costumes, I have everybody's measurement here. So the teacher could enter it here. It can be entered in obviously through the costume portion, or you can even, if you want to do it student by student, you can enter it in from their individual student info screen as well. So it doesn't really matter where in the process you do the measurements and enter them in. And different studios do them different ways. A lot of studios let the parent, or excuse me, not the parents, let the teachers do that now. And a lot of them still print out a blank sheet and let the teachers fill it out, and then the office manager will come back in there and do all the data entry. It's really up to you. So it doesn't really matter where in that process you do this, but the idea is you just pick the class or find the class. Fortunately, my example class is literally the last one on the list here. Hit view. Now I can see everyone's measurements. Now I've only entered in the girth measurements because this is all the system needs, but I would still recommend putting in all the other measurements as well. Those will come in handy when you do have to find those kids who are sort of in between on the sizes, and letting you pick out which ones need to be manually edited. That's just just that information is a little bit just handy to have. So we've already got our sizes entered in, so that part is done. Now I'm going to go to assign costume, and again you're going to do this by the class. So I'm going to scroll down, pick my class here. I'm going to do assign. And then here is my list of available costumes. I'm going to scroll down here. Here's my Weissman's costume that you saw me put in. Now this list can be resorted. So you can do it by vendor. You can do it by the costume name. As you see, that's ascending. If you click it again, it'll go to descending. Same with the vendors. It's ascending. So now if I want my Weissman's on top, I just click it again, and there we go. So here's my costume. Now I have the option of either assigning this to the class, which is fairly self-explanatory. It's going to assign that costume to everyone in there, or I can assign it to individual students within the class. This can be handy when you have, maybe you're using the same costume in multiple colors within the class. Maybe you are, maybe you have a student doing a solo. You want them in a different costume. Any situation like that, you can assign it to, to multiple kids. Maybe the boys are in one thing and the girls are in another. Same thing. So let's use that example. Let's say we got our boys and our girls in different things here. So it looks like there are 2 girls in this class. I want to assign this costume to the girls. I'm just going to click on one. It'll highlight it in blue. On a PC, you hold down your control key and you can click any of the others you want to and then assign it. I believe on a Mac it is the little Apple key, which is right next to the space bar, if I recall correctly. And then you just hit assign and it'll be done. Now I'm going to stop that for now and I'm going to assign it to a class just for our little example here. And then you'll get the little pop-up there letting you know. You hit return to costumes and we are ready to go. So now we've assigned it, and it's going to give everybody a size strictly based off of that girth measurement. So we'll come here to edit sizes and you'll scroll down. Now this is a set of tights that has been assigned to, looks like 30 or 40 kids. Same thing here though. I'm going to find my costume. Again, you can click on these headers to resort the list to make it easier to find what you're looking for. Also, you can use the Control F. That makes it a little bit easier too. And I'm going to do View Students. And here we go. So once you click View, it's going to pop your list up above the list of costumes. And now I can see everyone's measurement, the size that they were assigned, the cost that I'm paying for those costumes, and then the price that they're going to be paying me. You have a column here telling you whether or not the charge for that costume has been posted. So obviously we've just put this in and it has not been. And then again, if it's been ordered. So like I've talked about several times, I know I'm going to have 1 or 2 or 3 kids that I'm going to need to go in and change the sizes on. So to do that, I come here, find the student, just hit edit. I'm going to change, we'll say maybe she's a little shorter. We're going to change her to child medium, save. It's going to change her name to yellow or orange to let me know this student's costume has been manually edited. If I need to remove a costume for some reason, maybe the student has dropped and does not want the costume, I'll just simply get clear and it's going to change their name to red. A lot of people mistakenly think that when they drop a student from a class, it removes the costume. That is not the case. We've found through experience that even a lot of times when they drop, they may still want those costumes. So dropping them does not automatically do this for them. You still have to come here and remove anything that's been assigned to them. But you can see once you do it, turns them red and takes off their size, takes off what they owe, or what you owe and what they owe. So at this point, we are ready to move on. And now we go to post costume charges. And then here we have a couple of options as far as how we're going to post them. I can do them by the costume. So here's my costume. If I want to post just for this one, I can. I can post by the vendor. This, from what I've seen, tends to be the most popular way of doing it. Just lets you post everybody for one, everybody, all the charges for one vendor and get that vendor cleared off. And then obviously you can post it by the class as well. This will give you a list of your classes. You can resort them. For our purposes, I'm just going to post them by the costume. Before I do that, though, there's this update all sizes function. This sort of serves as like a refresh. It sort of refreshes everyone and make sure that everything is up to date before you do it. You can update these from a couple of different places. You can do that from the assign screen. You can see it there. From the edit sizes screen. You can see it here. Now this, when you do it here, it's just going to do it for this one costume. If you do it from this screen, it's going to sort of refresh everyone. So not a bad thing to do, especially if you're planning on posting a lot of charges at one time. It's definitely not going to hurt anything. If anything, it's only going to help. So I want to go ahead and post this costume. It's going to tell me what I'm doing here to make sure I'm doing what I want to do. Hit post. And it tells me I've posted 4 charges. We had 5 students, we cleared 1, so 4 students got charged for a total of $360.40. And if I pull up, I believe her name was Michelle. There we go. And then jump to her account, transactions. I can see my charge, and then you guys can also see the one I did yesterday. So we know that they are ready to go. So let me jump back here to costumes. And that's pretty much it with the post costume charges. Again, you can do it by the costume, by the vendor, and then by the class. And then you have a little bit of control over the description as well. So you can do costume. You can see these, the class name, the day, the time, the costume name, the day and the time, whatever you prefer there. And then so moving on to our reports. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to just sort of hit the highlights here. Some of them, I think, if you just read the title, are fairly self-explanatory. A vendor list is just going to be a list of your vendors. The costume list is going to be a list of all the costumes. But let's go over the really popular ones and the ones that can be helpful. Classes using costumes, fairly self-explanatory. Classes without costumes, that's a good one though. That one is sort of a nice just way to double check yourself. If you know that all of your classes should have some sort of costume, then this is a good way to check and make sure you didn't miss one. Costume confirmations, obviously this is going to be a big one. You can print this, you can email it, and then you have a couple of different things that you can include, all of these things that you can include on it. As far as printing it, long form is going to be your standard 8 by 11 paper. There is a postcard option. I think this is just a holdover from way back in the day. I don't think a lot of studios are using this anymore. It seems like a really costly way to do business, but that is the way it used to be done. But we're going to stick with the long form, and I'm going to tell it to include the price, the size, and we're going to do the measurements. Again, these are all just preference, and I'm going to do the vendor. And then I can print it or view it at least. And you can also do this by class. In fact, let me do that so we don't have to look at them all. I'm going to do the class that I've been working with. So we're going to do view. And then this is a confirmation. So this is intended for you to hand out. So each page is going to be a separate sheet for each student. So here we go. We have Michelle, who we've been working with. You can see the measurements here. Obviously, I didn't put most of them in. You get to see the class information, the costume information, the vendor, the name, the size, and then the price. Again, you can choose which of those things you want to put in there. Some studios may not want to include the size. I mean, you guys know better than I. You might end up with some parents who are arguing with you over that sort of thing. But so it's all there and optional for you. And then obviously you can email this as well. So if it's easier for you to email it to your parents, you can do it that way. I think that is a popular way of doing it these days. I think we added the email function maybe 2 years ago. Okay, so let's keep on moving here. So costume confirmations, I think everyone will probably use. The measurement list can be handy. It's pretty self-explanatory though. Unmeasured students, another good way of double checking yourself that lets you find anybody that maybe you missed in there. The costume worksheet. This one, the costume worksheet and then the purchase order worksheet are very similar. And I think more studios now are using this costume worksheet, and I find it a little bit easier than the purchase order worksheet. So let's take a look here. And again, this is just going to be for this one class. So for this class, I can pull this up, and it gives me all the information I need. Again, it gives me my vendor, my costume name, gives me all the kids in the class, it gives me their measurements, it gives me the sizes that have been assigned. You can mark it once it's been ordered. You can check the kids off once you've received payment. And then what a lot of the studios I talk to are doing, in fact, basically they just have these on clipboards, and when someone comes in to pick them up, they can check everything off before they hand them out, so they can say, I mean, obviously you'll know it's been ordered, but you can make sure you can check off once they've been paid. And then when they pick it up, a lot of studios are having the parent initial this to just, you know, so that there's no one coming back saying, wait a minute, I didn't get this costume, or I missed this costume. This gives you that chance to say, yeah, you initialed it, you signed off that you got it. So it takes a little bit of liability, for lack of a better term, off of you guys. The purchase order worksheet, and I'll come back to those labels there in just a minute. This, again, is very similar to the one we were just looking at. You do have to pick the vendor first. It is by vendor though, and it's very similar. It has a lot of that same information, but rather than being by class, it's by vendor and it's by costume. I don't know that a lot of studios are using this anymore. If they are, it's more internally. They're not using it like for distribution and handing out costumes. But it's got a lot of the same stuff. It's got all the costume information, obviously. You can mark off whether it's been paid for, whether you've received it, maybe. So it is an option, but I think more studios these days are using the worksheet. And honestly, I suppose with the received, you can maybe even date when you received it. I think a lot of studios are using this for distribution, but you can use it for when you take them in. Sherry, I think I'm about to get to your question here. Just one second. So the last one here on the list is the purchase order. This comes in two versions. It comes in a summary and then a detailed list. They're both going to have the same information on them with one exception. I'm going to start with the summary and pull it up. So this is going to give me a summary of everything I want to order for this one vendor, excuse me. And it's going to break it down by costume, and it's going to give me a number, or as Sherry, as you said, a tally for each of those sizes and how many I need for that size. So it's going to, it's got everything you need there. It's got all this information. It's got the quantity for each size. It's got the price that you are paying the vendor, and then it's going to give you a total. Now, normally you're going to have 10 or 20 costumes here, and it'll give you a total on all of that. Now, back a long time ago when this was first put in, you were probably going to print this off and fax it to these vendors, and maybe that's still the case in some circumstances. Worst case, you can save this PDF and email it, or honestly, even if you're just ordering through their website, it's easy just to keep this right in front of you as you're doing it, and you can pull up that costume and say, okay, I need to pick 5 smalls, stick them in your cart, 5 mediums, stick them in your cart, and it just lets you work down the list. So just keep one of these printed off for each vendor and just start at the top and work your way down. Even, like I said, even when you're doing it online, it's nice to have this right in front of you. It saves you a lot of clicking back and forth, maybe a lot of eyeing back and forth. Just makes life a little bit easier, and that's what we're all about. Now, I said this comes in 2 versions. So you just saw the summary. The detailed gives you all of that same information, with one exception. The detailed includes the kids' names. Now, if you're sending this to the vendor, they don't want these kids' names. It is just more stuff for them to look at, and maybe, I guess you could argue some privacy issues there. So don't send them the detailed version. If you're going to mail it in, definitely send in the summary version. They don't need all of that. They don't care, and you probably don't want to put out all those kids' names anyway. So that is the only difference there. All of the other information is exactly the same. Just has the kids' names on it. Okay, so I went through that fairly quickly, and there's no expectation for you guys to remember any of this. As you're working through it for real, call us. Let us help you out. It's easier to learn something as you're doing it, and we can walk you through it, than it ever will be just trying to listen to me and expect to remember it. We know that. We will be scheduling. We have some times blocked off in the next couple of months for this very thing. So call us, schedule a time with us. We'll spend an hour and a half with you, your staff, whoever we need to, and we'll walk you through all this stuff again. The whole idea here is just to kind of give you an idea so that you're not scared to see what the functions do. With that, you guys have already been sending me some questions, so I'm going to try to answer some of these that have already come in for everyone. But if you have any other questions, maybe a specific circumstance for your studio, send them to me, and then I'll answer them for everyone. Give me 1 second, just getting rid of someone here. All right, here we go. Wendy asked if there is the possibility of adding pictures to the costumes. There isn't currently, but that is in the plans. If you guys have been paying attention over the last year, we have started adding more and more things where pictures are a possibility. If you aren't aware, you should be able to add your students' pictures if you want to. Trying to find one now. I know that's in here. Well, there is one of our dogs. But so if you want to do a kid's picture right now, you can do that. You can, for the parent portal, add your staff's picture. So we're doing more and more of that stuff. It may be before the new app comes out, but yeah, that is in the works. It may just be maybe another. It may be maybe fall of 2020 before you see it. Krista asked if the system will flag kids who are sort of those in-between kids I've been talking about. It doesn't. Again, there's just too many variables for us to program in. I think I did the math at one point with 5 different size measurements. If you put in like 10 different possibilities, 10 different possibilities at each size, that's like 25,000 different possibilities. I did the math one time, and I may be exaggerating there a bit, but there's just too much code for us to put in all of that stuff. And for it to flag those sort of things, we'd have to put them all in. So it's just not really feasible for us. Danielle asked me to do a costume confirmation by student. So let me see if I can pull that up for you guys. Reports. The confirmations are, they're by account basically. You can really only pull them up by the class or for the entire school. So there's not really a way to pull up one. I don't think it's on the student page, but let me double check here. I'm just missing it. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a way to do the, oh, there's my daughter. So I was showing you guys you could do pictures. There's my little maniac. So it doesn't look like you can pull up the confirmation just by the student. So I'll mention that to our programmers. Maybe it's something we could put in. I don't think it'd be too terribly hard. All right, let's see here. Another question on the costume confirmations. The costume confirmations, when you send them or print them out for the parents, it should have all of that student's costumes on there. The one I used really just had the one, mostly just because that was the only one I had assigned to that class, just to keep everything nice and clean. And then the next question is about entering the measurements for the vendors. Danielle, let me know if I'm not quite following this question correctly. But the question is, when you enter measurements for each vendor, some vendors are going to have different ranges than others. Yes, the system understands that. So that's why when you enter the size chart for each vendor, because we understand that each vendor may be just slightly different. So when you do that, you're assigning that size chart to that particular vendor. And when you assign that vendor's costume, and then again, also, that's why when you assign a costume, you assign it to a vendor so that it understands, okay, I need, costume X needs to use vendor Y's size chart, and it keeps all of that straight. So I think that was the question. So if not, Danielle, just let me know, okay? While some more questions are coming in, a couple little things I see every now and then, common questions that we do get. A lot of times we'll get a studio calling in here in a panic, and they're trying to run their purchase order, and a costume is not on it. And they've assigned it, everything seems right, but when they pull up that purchase order, that costume is just missing. Typically that happens if you don't put the cost in when you set up the costume. So if I go back here, and I may have mentioned it as I was doing it, but just in case I didn't. If you skip this step and you don't put the cost in right here, it's not going to show up on a vendor's purchase order. The entire idea behind the purchase order is that it is tallying what you owe that vendor, and without that cost, it can't do that, so that item doesn't show up. The price doesn't matter when it comes to the purchase order, because they don't care what you're charging your customers, but it is not going to work without that. And then another question we get a lot is they'll go to, studio will pull up a costume and it'll say no size. And a lot of time, or they'll pull up the purchase order and the costume will say like no size or something. And typically in that situation, it's because they set that costume up as an accessory. Another one we see quite a bit is, they won't necessarily have caught the pattern, but half my kids in this class don't have a costume assigned to them. And a lot of times it's because they set that costume up as maybe for boys only, and they just didn't even catch that the girls were the ones who didn't get the costumes, or vice versa. Only the girls got it and the boys didn't. And it even takes us, you'd be surprised how long it takes us to catch that pattern too. But those are the big ones that we get where people are calling us in a panic. Fortunately, it's an easy fix, but sometimes it just takes a few minutes to find. All right, looks like I haven't gotten any more questions for the last couple of minutes. I'll give you just 1 or 2 more minutes. You guys should be getting a follow-up email from us tomorrow. It's going to have some, it's going to have some questions for feedback. So anything you got as far as feedback on how I can make these webinars better, please let me know. You won't hurt my feelings too much. We're going to be doing these over the next couple of months. If you have ideas for a webinar you'd like to see us do, let us know. It needs to be kind of a broad topic, not something very specific that would only take 2 minutes. But if there's a specific topic or a specific set of functions you'd like us to see, you'd like to see us do, let us know. We'd love to, we want to gear these towards you guys. You know what you need more than we know what you need. You know what's going on throughout the different parts of the year better than we do. We're pulling this off of the questions that we get asked and the time of year. So we know like this time of year, we're starting to get lots of questions about costumes. You know, in the next month or two, we're going to start getting a lot of questions about summer setup, fall setup. So that's kind of how we have geared this. But you know better than we do. So if there's anything we're missing, look at our webinar schedule. If there's anything we're missing, let us know, okay? All right, I've gotten a couple more questions real quick. Give me 1 second. Good question from Melissa. Is for the reports to be correct in here, do you have to post the costumes through this portion of Akada? The only one that I know of that really involves money are really these purchase orders. So the answer to that would be no. A lot of studios do like to post those costume charges in advance of having ordered them, and we get that. So no, you don't have to post the costume charges through here. A lot of them post it through these screens, especially this one right here, because then you can go in by class and post a charge, or you can even post it to multiple classes at one time. So no, there's off the top of my head, I don't know of a reason that you might have to post them through here. So really whatever works best for your studio. Like I said, I know a lot of you go ahead, you know, some studios do the deposit up front, some do the full charge up front, and I get it. I mean, you guys are on the hook once you order them. So I definitely get that. So I don't know of any reason. It's definitely not going to affect the purchase orders with the cost. So no, I don't think that's a super important step. And then as far as the reports that I mentioned, as far as like checking off whether it had been paid, you're doing that manually, honestly. So as long as you know what the charge on their account is, you could still use that same report and go in and check that off. A question, yes, you can use the same costume for as many classes as you need. When you assign it, you can, all you gotta do is go into the, just go into each class and assign that costume to each class. Doesn't matter how many classes are using it. Another good question, particularly about kind of what we're doing with these webinars. We will be posting these webinars probably by Friday. We'll have them on YouTube, but we'll obviously share them on our Facebook and our Instagram accounts. If you guys aren't already following us, please do. We love having our customers follow us, and that's really what they're there for. We'd love to use it to make announcements and things, and it's easy to get to. Couldn't be any easier to get to. Just scroll down to the bottom of your page, and you can click right there, and naturally it's broken. Let me try that one. Sorry about that. I put dance in our Instagram account and it broke the link, so that's my fault. Anyway, so click right there. Instagram is going to be Akada Dance Software, and we'll get that fixed. That's my fault. I changed that and I didn't tell DJ. So we'll get those posted there, and you'll be able to watch. You'll be able to go back and rewatch these if you need to. All right. Is there a way to pre-register kids in classes? Sherry, that question's a little off topic. Just shoot me an email. My email address is brett@akadasoftware.com. Just shoot me an email. Let's talk about that. I want to make sure I'm completely following it. And it's not really on topic with this particular conversation. All right, looks like I got everybody. So I'm going to wrap this up now. We appreciate so many of you guys coming. We still got some kinks to work out with these things, but they're getting better. And hopefully they'll continue to get better, especially with your feedback. So just, you'll get an email tomorrow. Just let me have it, and then we'll do a little bit better job with these things. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can call us, obviously, shoot us a message through intercom here. Apparently, a lot of you didn't know what this purple button was until I sent everyone a message yesterday. So it seemed like a few people at least learned what that was for. So we appreciate everybody. See, you got still got a couple more questions coming in. I'm going to end the video, but I will, if you've got a question that I've missed, just stick around and I'll answer them. I can just shoot you a message right back, and that'll give me a few minutes to go and do that. So everybody else, have a great day. Have a great day with your studios, and we will talk to you later.